Vanakkam and Namaste to everyone. The embers of controversy regarding Sanatana Dharma have been reignited in Tamil Nadu. In his maiden speech, the leader of the opposition, Thiru Udayanithi Stalin, before the newly elected 2026 Tamil Nadu Legislative Assembly, concluded his address with the proclamation, "We shall eradicate Sanatana Dharma." This echoes his previous 2023 declaration wherein he likened Sanatana Dharma to disease-carrying vectors that must be eradicated, an utterance that triggered a massive socio-political tempest throughout India, but it also earned Stalin Jr. the publicity he craved for. At that time, Thiru Udayanithi was not merely a legislator, he was the Minister for Youth Welfare and Sports Development and a syndicate member of the University of Madras, if my memory serves right. The event itself, organized by Tamil Nadu Progressive Writers and Artists Association, a literary affiliate of the Communist Party of India Marxist, was explicitly titled the Sanatana Eradication Conference. This opposition is, in plain terms, an overt antagonism and a covert hatred towards the Hindu Dharma. Realizing that the outright denigration of Hindu Dharma carries heavy electoral penalties these days, the advocates of eradication have engineered a tactical shift. Their new posture is, we are not opposed to Hinduism, we are opposed to Sanatana Dharma. Hinduism is different, Sanatana Dharma is different. In their lexicon, Sanatana Dharma is a catch-all term for social inequality, untouchability, gender subjugation, and every other systemic cruelty, all supposedly legitimized through the apparatus of religion. In short, they have reduced Sanatana Dharma to a synonym for societal evil, using this distorted definition to justify their politics of hatred. What should then an authentic response to this campaign of hatred, a well-planned campaign of hatred against Hindu Dharma, which is also aiming to divide Hindu people, Hindu society, in a very cunning way? A response to this must assert that Sanatana Dharma and Hindu Dharma are fundamentally one, and that casteism, untouchability, misogyny, hereditary varna, and social oppression form no part of Sanatana Dharma. Yet, it is precisely here that the discourse fractures and gets compromised. It gets compromised by voices, particularly within the Hindu Rightwing, and also by pseudo-conservative forces. I will give you two instances. A prominent right-wing Hindu orator and legal luminary asserts that not all Hindus belong to Sanatana Dharma. That Sanatanis are Hindus, but not all Hindus are Sanatanis, and Hindu definition is only a political definition, it is not a dharmic definition. Concurrently, a strategist for right-wing Hindu organization, an intellectual frequently invited to lectures at the IITs these days, he stated during an India Today conclave that Sanatana Dharma and Varna Dharma are inseparable. He went so far as to claim that spiritual liberation is impossible unless one bows at the feet of a Brahmin, citing Thiruvallur in the most distorted way to justify his point. There is no ambiguity that the Varna this strategist advocates is strictly hereditary, aligned as he is with the Guru Peetham that commands such a view. It is not just the right-wing political voices. A significant number of, but not all, Sanskrit scholars championing the defense of Sanatana Dharma, openly or covertly, endorse a birth-based Varna hierarchy. Occasionally, voices from this self-proclaimed orthodox camp even rise in defense of child marriage under the banner of Sanatana Dharma. If this is the case, how can one find fault with the Marxists and the Dravidian movement for their strong criticism of Sanatana Dharma, for their antagonism towards Sanatana Dharma? If Sanatana Dharma is merely the enforcement of a birth-based hierarchy, then for anyone who rejects hereditary inequality and holds that all human beings are born equal, should not Sanatana be an ideology worthy of eradication? We find ourselves trapped here in a bizarre consequence of consensus between extremes. The Marxist Dravidian axis asserts that Sanatana Dharma enforces birth-based hierarchy and the enslavement of women, and therefore must be destroyed. The autocrats and the reactionaries concur that Sanatana Dharma indeed means practicing caste hierarchy, hereditary varna, and the subjugation of women, arrogantly claiming that these very retrogressive structures have preserved our civilizational longevity. Both sides ironically agree on a flawed premise that Sanatana Dharma is one that is against change, that resists change, that never changes. It is a stagnant, ossified entity. That is the implication. But what in truth does the word Sanatana signify? Sanatana means that which is timeless, ageless, and immortal. It denotes that which has no discernible beginning yet endures forever. For any dharmic framework in changing social environment to possess such immortality, it must inherently possess the capacity for perpetual adaptation. It must adapt itself, it must evolve continuously. Therefore, Sanatana Dharma is not a frozen dogma. Anything that is Sanatana is not something that is frozen. It must be an eternal life force. Precisely because Sanatana is eternal, continuous self-renewal and adaptation becomes its foundational law, or that is the niyati of something being Sanatana. This definition has been already there. It has been associated with the word Sanatana since the Vedic age. The Atharva Veda very clearly declares that Sanatana means it has the quality of Punarnavaha. They call it ancient, yet it becomes ever new, renewing and adapting itself continuously. Then, what is Sanatana Dharma? As Sanatana Dharma, the Dharma must have a core. What is this core? Is it caste hierarchy? Is it hereditary varna? Is it jati varna? Is it child marriage? Is it untouchability? Is it some other form of social exclusion, like only certain people can alone study the scriptures? Certain people can alone recite the scriptures? Or is it a dogmatic insistence on a single deity, claiming that only one God is true and all other forms of worship are satanic and they should be destroyed? Is it a belief in one lost prophet? Or is it a belief in one exclusive book, claiming that all truth is contained in that book and the truth cannot exist outside that book and all other books should be burnt? What is the foundational bedrock of this Sanatana Dharma? Mahabharata illuminates what is Sanatana Dharma through a very beautiful anecdote. A Brahmin tapasvi named Jajali undergoes a very severe tapas. He stands without any movement for years doing this tapas. Over a period of time, a pair of birds builds a nest in his matted hair, lays eggs, and rears their fledglings. Even after his tapas is complete, Jajali, understanding that some birds have made his matted hair their home, he remains still. So he refuses to move lest he disturbs the avian family. Only after the birds leave permanently does he go to perform his ablutions. Now he is filled with pride, perhaps justified pride, but pride comes into his mind because he has practiced in a very wonderful way the vow of Ahimsa and Jivakarunya. However, once the pride enters his mind, he hears a voice, a celestial voice, that says that Tuladhara, a person who is residing in Kasi, is a far greater practitioner of Dharma than Jajali. Jajali once he decides to go to Kasi and meet this Tuladhara. He goes to Kasi. He wants to get instructed in Dharma from this great Dharmavan. So he expects to meet a towering ascetic. And that Jajali is astonished to find Tuladhara as a small merchant who collects forest products like wild roots, herbs and forest oils, etc. and sells them to the residents of Kasi. Jajali nevertheless goes and humbly asks for instructions in Dharma. The merchant, the forest, starts instructing Jajali in Dharma. And when he is doing this instruction, he also defines Sanatana Dharma. So he says, Dharmam saragasyam sanatanam sarva bhuda hidam maitram. The very core, the hidden core, the deep core of Sanatana Dharma, Saragasya of the Sanatana Dharma is that Sarva Bhuta Hitam, doing good, wishing good for all living beings, and Maitram. Maitram is usually people translate it as friendship or fraternity. Actually, very interestingly, Babasaheb Ambedkar, when he compares the word Maitram with the word fraternity, he says that Maitram is a better holistic term than fraternity. It is spiritual kinship. So what here the term means here is that a person should feel spiritual kinship with all existence, Sarva Bhuta. He should have Maitram. This is Sanatana Dharma. This is the core. Now, can this cosmic benevolence be confined to a specific sectarian creed? No. Can it be reduced to mere ritualism? Not at all. It transcends localized dogmas and external rituals. Yes, remember, it also animates them all. It is the Dharma that survives even when the material universe dissolves. The great Tamil epic poet Kambar, who wrote Ramavataram, puts this in a very beautiful way when he describes the spiritual void of Ravana's Lanka. See, when he is describing Lanka, he shows that it is a very powerful state. It shows at each and every point the authority and the strength and the power of Ravana. So, I will tell those Tamil verses. Karang Kalpuga, Kadiravan Gulipuga, Marali Marampuga, Inivanavar Puga, Engai Vambe. Up to this point, the meaning is the sweeping winds that can create some kind of hindrance to people, it cannot enter Lanka, Ravana's Lanka. The sun's rays, if they are going to create problem for the people, burn the people, it cannot enter Ravana's Lanka. Death himself dares not step in. And the gods, the devas, they cannot gain access except with the permission of Ravana. So, till this point, you are seeing the greatness of Ravana, the strength of Ravana, the power of Ravana, authority of Ravana. And then Kamban tells the last line, Thirangu Kalathu Yavayum Sidayinum Sidaya Arampuha. During the time of cosmic deluge, the time of cosmic dissolution, everything crumples, everything they return to their seed form. They all get dissolved. But still, one thing does not get dissolved in this cosmic deluge, and that is the Dharma. So he says it is Sidaya Aram, which means essentially Sanatana Dharma, and that does not enter Ravana's Lanka. And actually, that makes the fact that Sanatana Dharma does not enter Ravana's Lanka makes it possible for Sri Rama's arrow enter Lanka into Ravanavata. Now remember, Ravana was a master of Vedic rituals. He was born of a very noble lineage and he used to boast about it. Yet, Sanatana Dharma was absent from his life and even in his province, in his rule. His Lanka possessed staggering wealth, towering palaces. Being a Vedic scholar, definitely there should have been sacrificial altars, Vedic platforms, Yajna platforms, and there should have been even Veda Patasalas, and there should have been grand temples. But still, Ravana's Lanka lacked Sanatana Dharma. Yavayim Sidayinum Sidaya Aram. Sanatana Dharma was not there. That is the spiritual void, the spiritual deficiency, which made it possible for Sri Rama to enter into Lanka and do Ravanavata. All these point to one thing. The Indic tradition has never equated Sanatana Dharma with the mere religious beliefs or outward rituals. Then a question arises. Can societal conventions and shifting customs be equated with Sanatana Dharma? After all, some people say that Sanatana Dharma is a way of life, and if we are going to map the societal rules and the customs and the social hierarchy and the social exclusion that exist in a society with Sanatana Dharma, will we be right? Well, it is natural for individuals within a society, particularly if they are belonging to the affluent class, culturally or economically affluent class, to mistake the prevailing customs and hereditary traditions for immutable eternal laws and call it Sanatana Dharma. Arjuna did exactly that. That is what he said to Sri Krishna in the first chapter, Arjuna Vishada Yoga. He said, Kulakshaye Pranashyanti Kuladharma Sanatana. So for him, Kuladharma was the Sanatana one. He even gives another one interesting qualifier to Jadi Dharma and Kuladharma. He tells that they are perpetual, Saswata. So these are the two words that he uses for Jadi Dharma and Kuladharma. One is that Kuladharma is Sanatana, another one is that Jadi Dharma and Kuladharma are Saswata. But remember, what does it show is that this is the literary evidence that during the time of Mahabharata, that is how people thought that the social hierarchies, the social structures, birth-based Varna, they form the Sanatana Dharma. They are the Saswata Dharma. However, across the remaining 17 chapters, Sri Krishna never uses the terms Jadi Dharma or just Kula Dharma even once. Instead, he introduces two terms, beautiful terms, Swadharma, one's inherent duty, and Swabhava, one's inner psychological nature in the holistic and the deepest sense of the word. These are the frameworks which are rooted entirely in individual orientation. Completely detached from hereditary, Jati can be detached. Let us examine then, taking into consideration that this is how Sri Krishna viewed Dharma, not as Jadi Dharma or Kula Dharma, but as Swadharma. Let us examine how Sri Krishna uses the word Sanatana throughout Bhagavad Gita. So, the first time we encounter the term Sanatana in Sri Krishna's verse is in Sankhya Yoga. So he says, he describes the indestructible self in each and every person. Achet yoyam adak yoyam akletyo asoshayevacha nitya sarvagadasthanur achaloyam sanatanaha. The self cannot be broken, it cannot be burnt, it cannot be wetted or dried. It is eternal. It is Nitya Sarvagadasthanur Achaloyam Sanatanaga. It is eternal, all pervading, and it permeates everywhere, and it is stable, and it is immovable, and it is Sanatana. So here Krishna uses a very beautiful term, Achetyoyam. Achetya means it cannot be broken. I am is the self. Why this is a very important term? Consider the contemporary socio-political term Dalit, which also means the broken ones. It denotes communities that have been historically crushed, exploited, and subjected to the subhuman cruelty of untouchability by their own brother and justified in the name of religion. They have created the term Dalit to fight for their political, social, cultural, spiritual rights. And this term means the broken ones. But Sri Krishna says about a particular self, an innermost self that exists equally within each and every human being, untouched by the divisions of language, religion, caste, nationality, or gender. Sri Krishna identifies this universal core as Sanatana. Achetyoyam adakyoyam akletyo asoshayevash nitya sarvagadastanu rasuloyam sanatana. This verse stands as a quiet, powerful testament, awaiting those who will listen, who are ready to listen, and whispers to the oppressed people, your core cannot be broken. The innermost self within you is resilient against any force that seeks to shatter your humanity and self-respect. Stand tall against social injustice. That is the inner strength that this particular sloga in Sankhya Yoga has. Then we encounter Sanatana, the term Sanatana, in Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, in the 31st sloka. Here Krishna says, Yajna Sishtam Brita Bhujo Yanti Brahma Sanatana. Those who partake the nectar, which is what that remains after the sacrifice, they attain the Sanatana Brahman, that is Sanatana. Here Yajna is not just the ritual, or rather, Yajna is not the ritual alone. Life itself is the Yajna. Earning wealth is Yajna. Dedicating it to the welfare of the society is Yajna. Tapas is Yajna. Yoga is Yajna. Learning and teaching are Yajna. Agriculture and food production, as well as sharing of the food, they are all Yajna. Krishna has already pointed out the diversity of Yajna as a kind of a functional archetype for all the domains in the society. Dravya Yajnas, Tabo Yajna, Yoga Yajnas, Tatapare, Swadhyaya Jnana Yajnasha. That is how he describes the diverse forms of Yajna. So, to produce and share sustenance, that is the highest sacrifice, that is the highest Yajna. This philosophy, this vision is, this darshana is illustrated in the Mahabharata through the story of the famous golden mongoose, the golden mongoose. So, Gita also warns that those who cook solely for themselves, they eat only sin. Here, the food encompasses all material resources and wealth. You know, the great Tamil sage Thiruvalluvar particularly pointed out that the Manisha Yajna, that is providing food to the people who come to your house, that is a great Yajna. In the words of Thiruvalluvar, நீ துணை என்பதொன்றில்லை விருந்தின் துணை துணை வேள்வி பயன். Velvi means yajna. So he says the value of a sacrifice, a yajna, cannot be measured by its size. Its true measure is the worth of the guest who is honored. And again he says, Parindombu Pachachem enba Virindombi Velvi Talipadadar. Virindombi Velvi, that is the word he uses, that feeding a person who comes to sharing wealth or sharing food with the person who comes to your house, that in itself is yajna, is what Tirukural says. So here what Sri Krishna does is that he points out that to attain, expand yourself, expand your inner self and make it realize that it is Brahman. What you have to do, you have to make your life yajna and create welfare, create prosperity for all the people, and then you take from that particular thing. So this is also the basis of the trusteeship concept that Mahatma Gandhi talked about. Then you see Sanatana, the term Sanatana in another one very beautiful verse in Jnana Vijnana Yoga. He says, Bijam Mam Sarva Bhutanam Vitti Partha Sanatana. So here what he means is, Sri Krishna is the immanent, involuted all possibilities of life in every life form. He vibrates within all life. So here we are seeing a very beautiful, unique nature of Sanatana Dharma. The term Sanatana also. Many religions view God predominantly as an external creator, an architect who builds creation from the outside, much like an engineer constructing a machine. Historically, some of these frameworks posited that all of nature was created solely for human consumption because human being is at the top of the pyramid of life, last created by God. So everything else was created for humans to enjoy. This is the paradigm that the renowned historian of technology, Len White Jr., identified in his seminal paper, The Historical Roots of Our Ecological Crisis, as the philosophical driver of our modern environmental crisis devastation. Fortunately, modern evolutionary science has dismantled the concept of an external cosmic clockmaker. This is powerfully articulated in Richard Dawkins' famous book, The Blind Watchmaker. Then there is the systems biologist, Elizabeth Sartorius. She studies ecology, evolution, systems biology, and the confluence of various philosophical systems. So she classifies the religious worldviews into two categories: allopoietic religions, where God exists outside creation as an external architect, and autopoietic religions, which recognize the divine as an immanent, self-organizing evolutionary force, dwelling within all life in each and every life form. While religions like Christianity and Islam fit the former, Hinduism, Taoism, Buddhism, they embody the autopoietic vision. By defining the Supreme Being, the Godhead, the universal cosmic Godhead, as the involuted seed of life, which is Sanatana within all entities, Gita aligns seamlessly with ecological and scientific realities, assigning intrinsic value to every strand, that is, every individual life form in the entire web of life. Now, Krishna expands the canvas even further in incredible ways. In the Akshara Brahma Yoga, he says, Parastasmastu Bhavonyo Vyakta Avyakta Sanatana. This is Akshara Brahma Yoga, 20th sloka. So he says, beyond this manifest world, the unmanifest also exists, but the ground of this is the basic ground of this. Beyond this, the transcendental, yet the ground of this is that which is Sanatana, that which does not perish. Here, Sanatana rises to a cosmological principle. Remember that we see this universe, which is made of three dimensions. We see this three-dimensional universe. Then also we can feel the flow of time, which is the fourth dimension. But then the physicists, they say that the cosmologists, astrophysicists, they point out that there are also higher dimensions, hidden dimensions. So if you trust the string theory, then there are 11 dimensions, then there is the multiverse, then there is the parallel universes, and then there is the dark matter. So you have the Vyakta, the manifest universe, there is also a Vyakta components to it. But the basis of all this is a fundamental reality. And that reality is transcendental, at the same time it is also immanent in the universe, and that is Sanatana. So this is what Sri Krishna says about Sanatana. This has an impact on Arjuna. His spiritual eye awakens. He gets this vision of the cosmic form of Krishna. Then he exclaims in awe, Tvam aksharam paramam veditavyam, tvamasya visvasya param nidanam, tvam avyaya sasvata dharmakopta, sanadhanastvam purusho madhomi. Now, look at these particular terms. Tvam avyaya sasvata dharmakopta, sanadhanastvam purusho madhomi. The person who said the sasvata things are the jadi dharma and the kula dharma. The person who said kula dharma is the Sanatana. Now he is saying that this all-pervading entity, this principle that is there in each and every human being, irrespective of the varna, irrespective of the jadi, irrespective of the nationhood, that principle that is there in each and every living being, the principle that is there, which is the basis of the entire cosmos, in its Vyakta and Avyakta form, that is Sanatana. So, Then Krishna in Purushottama Yoga, he brings out a very beautiful aspect of Sanatana. So he says, Mamaivancho Jiva Loge Jiva Buddha Sanatana. Now, his amsa in Jiva Loka, in this, shall we call it biosphere? In this mandala of the Jiva. Jiva essentially is the conditioned being. In each and every Jiva Bhuta, there is this fragment. Already he has said that as Bijam he exists in each and every living being. Now he says that his fragment exists in the conditioned being. Even in the conditioned state, the fragment is there. And that fragment, now remember, he is also there entirely, and the fragment is also there. Every fragment contains the entirety. That is what the holographic universe of David Bohm meant. So, it's a fractal vision of a cosmic form. In each and every being, it is there. So, what happens is that every living being has a value of its own. In certain other worldviews, in certain other religions, the value of a living being is decided by its relation to the human being. The human being is at the center. It is the egocentric view. And here is the ecological centric view in Krishna's Sanatana. So, when Arjuna sought to cage the word Sanatana within the narrow confines of defensive social structures and unequal customs, Sri Krishna systematically liberates and expands it. So, in his map, in his canvas, Sanatana crosses every dimension of existence. It pulsates through the every dimension of existence, from the individual soul to social integration through the selfless yajna, to the ecological life force, and finally to the macrocosmic all-encompassing reality. Sanatana is revealed not as a social code, but as an attribute of absolute truth, pervading, sustaining, and outlasting the cosmos. The pan-Indic legacy of Sanatana is that every major spiritual tradition born of this sacred geography has qualified itself with the word Sanatana. So Gautama Buddha referred to his path of his Dhamma as Sanatana. Isa Dhammo Sanatana. The Jain lexicographer Amar Singha, in his famous Sanskrit thesaurus Amaragosha, defines Sanatana as Sasvata, Dhruva, that is firm, Nitya, that which is ever present. In the Sikh tradition, there is a Mahavakya, which is foundational, and it is Sat Sri Ahal. Devout Sikhs historically identify themselves as Akalis, and there is even a political party, Akalita. Now, what does Sat Sri Ahal means? Sat refers to the truth. Satyam. Sri is auspicious beauty, Sundaram. And Ahal means it is timeless. Ahal means it is beyond the Kala, and it is Kala Deda, and it is also not affected by Kala. A principle that is there everywhere, which transcends time, which defies death and time. In other words, Sanatana. So Sat Sri Akal essentially means Satyam, Sundaram, Sanatanam. One who follows this timeless path is an Akali, or in other words, is a Sanatani. Thus, Sanatana is a qualifier for every Indic tradition, whatever the tradition may be. Gita explicitly forbids pinning this vast qualitative cosmic ideal to the transient and flawed practice of specific era. Now, let us come to the 19th century. In Tamil Nadu, in the 19th century, there was Ramalinga Vallalar. And he termed his spiritual path as Saha Kalai, means deathless life, education of deathless life, the art of deathless life. And he anchored it in universal compassion, Jiva Karunya. Remember Jajali. Remember what Tuladhara said to Jajali. Right? Now, he declared around 1892, Angirasa year, that is 1892, and in Protasi, which would, like in the month of Protasi, which would come around, let us say, August, September, October, that period. There he says, at that time he said, because I'm saying this because people used to say that okay, he changed later. Particularly the Tamil separatists, the Tamil chauvinists, they used to say that Vallalar changed later. He became a hyper-rationalist. He was the proto-Ivera, which is actually an insult to Ramalinga Vallalar. So Ramalinga Vallalar at this point, after he established the Satyanyana Sabai, he says this. It is within the Hindu scriptures, the Hindu Vedagama, that is the word he uses, within the Hindu Vedagama, alone, that is what he said, alone, Hindu Vedahamangalil matrame, in Hindu Vedagamas alone, that the absolute spiritual attainments, the Yamasiddhi and Jnanasiddhi, are articulated. No other religion speaks of this education of immortality. Remember, the education of immortality, the path to immortality, or immortal path. If such concepts are found elsewhere, they are mere approximations drawn from the Hindu Vedagamas. That is what Vallalar says. So, what he says essentially is that his path, his Sahakala, his Sanmarga is Sanatana. Is Sanatana. Now, you have to ask the question, in that case, how people could associate the term Sanatana Dharma with untouchability or birth-based inequality or Varna Dharma, birth-based Varna Dharma, etc. For that, we have to look at the history. During the British time, during the colonial era, Indian society suffered from deep social stagnation. Naturally, it magnified all the malignant features of the society: intercaste oppression, child marriage, subjugation of women, sati, untouchability, they were rampant. So this allowed the colonial state and the local vested interests to define this ossification as Hindu Dharma. The movement that rose with maximum ferocity against this decay was the Arya Samaj. So these people, the colonial state, because it helped the evangelical apparatus to tell that okay, this really malignant social stagnant features, they constitute Hindu Dharma. So if you want to get out of these practices, you want to make your women get educated, if you want liberation from untouchability, if you want liberation from child marriage, if you want liberation from sati, get out of Hinduism. Because that is what Hinduism is. This is how the colonial administrators as well as the evangelists framed Hindu Dharma. And unfortunately, for the vested interests, which have developed within the Hindu society, irrespective of the caste, these vested interests, they existed in all the jatis. You cannot identify one particular jati and say that only that jati had vested interests. No. All the dominant jatis, mostly, they had vested interests. So people with the conscience, they would revolt against it from all the jatis again. And to them, the colonial apparatus would say, the colonial administration and the evangelical institutions would say, you have to get out of Hinduism. Right? So it was against this that ferociously the Arya Samaj movement arose. Its founder, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, when he was asked if he had founded a new religion, he categorically stated that the Dharma, the religion of Arya Samaj is nothing but Sanatana Vedic Dharma. There is a great Vedic scholar, Dr. Ranganji. He points out that in modern times, the term Sanatana Dharma was again brought to public conscience mainly through Arya Samajis. So, Arya Samaj was at the vanguard of the Dharma Yuddha against Jati and gender oppression. It was through the efforts of Arya Samajis that the historic Sharda Act was enacted. It was Harbilas Sada who made that possible, and because of that, child marriage was stopped, and because of that, a lot of women could get educated. Today, if the women are getting educated in India in such a big way, then you have to actually thank Swami Dayananda Saraswati, Swami Dayananda Saraswati Maharishi, and for that, The basis was Vedic Sanatana Dharma. So, though Swami Dayananda Saraswati and his disciples did not advocate idol worship, his followers strongly backed temple entry satyagragas and the efforts to create legislative bills for social inclusion. When Vithalbhai Patel was a brother of Vallabhbhai Patel, introduced a bill to legalize interjati marriages, towards which it was a move at that time, towards which even Mahatma Gandhi and Balagangadhara Tilak hesitated. At that time, Arya Samaj was the one that welcomed it strongly. Lala Lajpat Rai, who was an Arya Samaj leader and also a leader of Hindu Mahasabha, he strongly supported it. And another one person who supported it was Maharishi, Mahayogi Sri Aurobindo. In 1920s, in the present-day Uttarakhand, there was a big social injustice, which was the rule, that if the scheduled Jati communities, if they use palanquins during their wedding processions, the so-called upper caste would violently attack them, burn the palanquins, and they would attack the bride and the bridegroom, and they would also attack and burn the huts of scheduled community people. Against this came the Dola Palki movement, in which they asserted the right of the scheduled community people to use the palanquins during their marriages, and this was spearheaded by Arya Samaj. And in all these struggles, Arya Samajis were beaten, killed, humiliated, they were excommunicated, some of their children died, but they fought. And today, if we are seeing a more egalitarian Hindu society, we have to thank Arya Samaj, we have to thank Maharishi Dayananda Saraswati, and we have to thank the Vedic Sanatana Dharma. The renowned contemporary historian and thinker Yuval Noah Harari, in his book Homo Deus, benchmarks Swami Dayananda Saraswati against his European contemporaries. You know, there is a tendency among Indian intellectuals to compare social values of a particular century of Hindu Dharma with the social values of present-day European society. And then they would proclaim the superiority of the European values. But Yuval Noah Harari doesn't do that. So what he does is that he compares the 19th century edicts of Pope regarding women's rights with the declarations of Maharishi Dayananda Saraswati. And Harari observes that Swamiji's views was comparatively more progressive and liberated than that of Vatican. And it was this revolutionary reformer, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, Maharishi, who proudly identified his religion as Sanatana Vedic Dharma. Come to Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda presented Sanatana Dharma as the vast canvas of Vedantic universalism, capable of embracing all the faiths of humanity. He said in his lecture on his master, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa never sought to alter any religion, because he realized that all religions are fundamentally the distinct expressions of the single, all-encompassing Sanatana Dharma. It's a great statement. Many people mistake it for a crude statement that all religions are the same. No, what he said is that all the religious experiences, all the genuine religious experiences, they are anchored in Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion. So he was actually expanding the canvas of Sanatana Dharma, the time of globalization, to include all the religions. The result is that, I think it was in 2007, Newsweek came out with a cover story, "We are all Hindus now," because this universal acceptance has percolated into American society. They no more hold that only a particular church or only a particular denomination, a particular religion alone can bring salvation to humanity. They say if you are a good being, whatever may be your religion, you will have salvation and liberation. And that is a very Hindu idea. That is what Lisa Muller, I think, that was the author of that particular piece, that is what she said. This is a Hindu idea and it has come, and we are all Hindus now. And that is how Sanatana Dharma evolves with the times. When the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, the complete works, the lectures, the writings, the letters, when they were all first compiled and published in 1907 by Ramakrishna Math, the introduction explicitly framed them as the manifestation of the glory of Sanatana Dharma. Now, the one who articulated all this with absolute political and spiritual clarity, establishing it as the soul of our nationhood, was Sri Aurobindo Ghosh, Maharishi Aurobindo. In his historical Uttarpatha speech in 1909, he proclaimed, and these are the words of Sri Aurobindo, that which we call the Hindu religion is the real eternal religion, that is Sanatana Dharma, because it is the universal religion which embraces all other religions. Remember, Sanatana Dharma is not something that contracts itself into some Vedic texts, some small rituals. No. When we use the term Veda, we use the term Veda in its most profound, the deepest spiritual and the most universal meaning. That is what Swami Vivekananda has said. So, Sri Aurobindo says that which we call the Hindu religion is really the eternal religion, because it is the universal religion which embraces all other religions. If a religion is not universal, it cannot be eternal. A narrow religion, a sectarian religion, an exclusive religion can live only for a limited time and a limited purpose. This Hinduism is the one religion which impresses on the world how close God is to us and embraces all possible means by which man can approach God. It is the one religion which insists every moment on the truth which all religions acknowledge, that He is in all men and all things, and that in Him we move and have our being. I say no longer that nationalism is a creed, a religion, a faith. I say that it is the Sanatana Dharma which is for us nationalism. This Hindu nation was born with the Sanatana Dharma. With it moves, and with it prospers. When the Sanatana Dharma declines, then the nation declines. And if Sanatana Dharma were capable of perishing, note the words, capable of perishing, it won't perish. With the Sanatana Dharma, the nation will perish. Tragically, when Arya Samaj waged the progressive battles against the Jadi oppression and Jadi discrimination and child marriage, and when it was fighting for the women's rights, the pseudo-orthodox reactionaries, they began calling themselves Sanatanis to defend their privileges. The colonial government found this division highly convenient. Consequently, in modern political discourse, the beautiful name of Sanatana was allowed to be hijacked by reactionaries and literalist formalists, the so-called pseudo-acharyawadas. Yet, the lowering of the spiritual meaning of Sanatana Dharma that was resisted by the towering spiritual stalwarts of modern India. They refused to surrender this sublime phrase to regressive forces. When Mahatma Gandhi faced fierce resistance from orthodox priests during the Vaikam Satyagraha and his anti-untouchability campaigns, he always referred to himself as Sanatani, and that he was against untouchability because he belonged to Sanatana Dharma. Because of his Sanatana Dharma that he was fighting against untouchability. As early as 1921, writing in Young India, Gandhiji declared that he calls himself a Sanatani Hindu, and it is precisely by the authority of that Sanatana Dharma that he was waging his war against untouchability. He wore the badge of Sanatani with pride, and he even asserted that Buddhism and Jainism were inseparable streams of the grand Hindu matrix. Similarly, the great Hindu and the great Advaita Paramacharya of Kerala, Jagadguru Sri Narayana Guru, he gave the Mahavakya Urjadi Urumadam Urudevam Manisham. He consistently reclaimed the term Sanatana Dharma. Before his Mahasamadhi in 1928, during a historic address in the province of Alappuzha in 1927, he identified his uncompromising Advaitic, Jadiless path as Sanatana Dharma. There is a context to it. At that time, many of his disciples, broken by the horrific, subhuman, suicidal Jati oppression that was prevalent in Kerala, Swami Vivekananda called it a lunatic asylum. They believed that converting to Christianity or at least Buddhism was the only way to reclaim their self-respect. They frequently urged that their Guru himself, that he should recommend Mark's conversion. If possible, he could convert himself to Buddhism. In response to all this, Sri Narayana Guru gave his profound final directive. He said, these are the words of Guru: those who firmly believe that the social hardships and sufferings cannot be resolved without changing their faith, let them convert to this Sanatana Dharma. Let that be their conversion. Let that be their declaration of liberation. By this, Jagat Guru anchored Sanatana Dharma entirely in an all-embracing love that asks no jati, sees no jati, and names no jati. In Tamil Nadu, this legacy was carried forward by Vedanta Kesari Paramacharya Swami Siddhavananda. He was a monk of Ramakrishna Vivekananda lineage. His tireless work for eradication of untouchability was highly praised. Mahatma Gandhi was extraordinarily impressed by his work. When they first met, that is Mahatma Gandhiji and Vedanta Paramacharya Swami Siddhavananda, despite opposing untouchability, Mahatma Gandhi held a lingering belief in a birth-based Varna framework. Swami Siddhavananda directly corrected Mahatma Gandhi. At that time, remember, Swami Siddhavananda was a young monk, and Mahatma Gandhi had already reached pinnacle of his fame. Still, he did not hesitate. He corrected Mahatma Gandhi. He explained that Varna cannot be determined by birth. Children born of the same mother can belong to entirely different Varnas based on their individual inner psychological nature, guna karma. Gandhiji later revised his views. That Swami Siddhavananda, that Advaita Paramacharya, who also received insights in Advaita from Jagat Guru, Narayana's Guru, he wrote the following about Sanatana Dharma. In fact, he wrote a book on Gayatri Mantra, and he said that all the people and all genders, they should recite Gayatri Mantra, because Gayatri Mantra is this great treasure, and there should be a spiritual communism. That is the word he used. And so Gayatri Mantra should be recited by all the people, irrespective of their jati or gender. And this book at that time created a huge controversy, and it was a revolutionary book. Regarding Sanatana Dharma, this Vedanta Kesari, the greatest Advaitic monk of 20th century that Tamil Nadu produced, was Swami Siddhavananda. That Siddhavananda wrote, Sanatana Dharma refers to the principles of life that endure across all time. The name Sanatana Dharma is the only truly fitting description for Hindu Dharma. Other religions are built around historical prophets or founders, but Sanatana Dharma is anchored purely on Dharma, the cosmic law. That which sustains and holds life together is Dharma. The entire universe is grounded in this Dharma. The Dharma of fire is to burn. The Dharma of water is to moisten. The Dharma of wind is to dry. As a human being rises higher in culture, the Dharma they must practice becomes loftier, rooted fundamentally in Tyaga. Sanatana Dharma belongs universally to all humanity. No single group can claim an exclusive monopoly over its truths. Because it is founded on objective philosophical reality, Vastu Tantra, rather than personal dogmas, Sanatana Dharma can never be destroyed. Whosoever attempts to annihilate it will only find their own efforts dissolved. This is what Swami Siddhavananda said. This is in 1982 or 83 around. Therefore, Sanatana Dharma is the grand universal designation for the civilizational Hindu family. Every spiritual stream, path and lineage born of this soil shares an equal inheritance in this title. Those who minimize this expansive vision, shackling it to narrow jati prejudices or localized ritualism, do so either out of deep ignorance or with a malicious hidden agenda. Surrendering this term to such polemics carries twin danger. One, it abdicates a beautiful, evolved darshanic concept refined by the life works of and sacrifices, sanctified by the sacrifices of Maharishi Swami Dayananda, Jagadguru Sri Narayana Guru, Mahatma Gandhi, Vedanta Kesari Swami Vivekananda, and Advaita Brahmacharya Swami Siddhananda. And it delivers this wonderful term directly into the hands of regressive, birth-obsessed pseudo-traditionalists. If Hindus naively reject this title, it leaves a semantic vacuum that external proselytizing agencies will readily appropriate to legitimize their own theological agendas, resulting in a massive spiritual and cultural fraud. Every individual, already I have to tell you this. For example, if you come to southern districts like Thuthukudi, Tirunelveli, Kanyakumari, and if you ask a person on the road, can he go to a Veda temple? Then he would point not to a Hindu temple, he would point to the church. Ask, can he find a person of Veda religion, Veda Matam, Veda Kovil? They would point to a Christian church. If you ask a Veda Puttagam, they would point to the Bible. See? So this is the danger. So already in Kerala there are Sanatana seminaries, there are Sanatana chapels, etc. That is why I am saying this. Every individual who respects the spiritual freedom of humanity, who refuses to vilify other faiths and other people, and who honors the divine spark within creation, he is a Sanatani. Be they an Orthodox practitioner, a Vedic, an Advaitin, a Saivite, a Vaishnavite, a Sikh, a Dvaitin, a Buddhist, or a follower of indigenous ancestral tribal traditions. They are all Sanatanis. So, let the ancient truth of Buddha resonate across the noise of our current cultural, political, pseudo-cultural, political arenas. Isa Dhammo Sanatana. Thank you. Namaste. Thank you for listening.